Hello everybody, I'm Kareem and I'm the host of the Youth Debate and Learn channel, and what I want to talk about today is Canadian political parties, and I want to keep it under 10 minutes, so let's hop right into it. Depending on how you look at it, Canada has 2, 3, 4, 5 main political parties, or often described as a two-party plus system, so kind of equivalent to, but not quite the same as what they have in the UK, where you have two parties that either form a majority or minority in government. Then you have a lot of other parties, smaller parties, that still play a big role in federal politics, but they don't really ever get close to winning elections and whatnot. So the first party I want to talk about is the Liberal Party, and their party color is red, and they're Canada's big center-left party. So what I mean by that is they would be somewhat equivalent to America's Democrats, but a lot smaller across the political spectrum. They would be kind of like the Pete Buttigieg party of Canada. So they tend to be supportive of progressive measures like being pro-choice and pro-same-sex marriage. And they tend to favor high taxes on the rich and big government, generally speaking, and they're sort of Canada's huge center-left party, and they elect a lot of prime ministers and win a lot of elections. So they're kind of seen as Canada's natural leading party. But that being said, there's a lot of conservative prime ministers, which is the next party I'm about to talk about. So the Conservative Party of Canada is the color blue. As you'll see, it's the opposite of American politics, where red is liberal and blue is conservative. So the Conservative Party is kind of Canada's huge center-right party, but I would not equate it to the Republican Party in the US simply because they're a lot more moderate. So the Conservative Party is pro-choice and, generally speaking, like pro-same-sex marriage, although those stances are a little bit controversial in some very conservative areas of the Conservative Party. So they form, as of right now, official opposition in Parliament, and they often do form government as a majority or minority government. And so yeah, the Liberal and the Conservative Party are really the only two parties that ever even come close to forming government and gets to have the cabinet that runs the country and elect the Prime Minister of Canada, which is equivalent to America's president. It's kind of in the political scheme our head of state, although technically we're a constitutional monarchy and we have Queen Elizabeth II of Great Britain as our head of state, as the very top of government, but the Queen is more of a symbolic figure in Canadian politics, and she doesn't have much power. So with the two big parties in Canadian politics, the Liberal Party and the center-left, that supports big government and all these progressive policies, and the Conservative Party on the center-right, that tends to be skeptical of like immigration and Islamic extremism, and tends to be more small government and whatnot. We have a lot of, I would say like 3 or 4 notable smaller parties that don't ever form government or even come close, but they still play a big role in Canadian politics. So the first party I want to talk about in that realm is the NDP. They in 2011 they formed the official opposition, beating out the Liberals, which was pretty interesting, but they almost always come in third place. The NDP, or the New Democratic Party, their color is orange, and they either come in third or fourth place in seat count, although they are always third, almost, generally speaking, in the share of the popular vote. So the NDP is Canada's almost, I would describe as socialist, although that's kind of a huge generalization. They're the Social Democratic Party of Canada, and they tend to, in the American politics, they would kind of be your Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren party, and they tend to always support ultra progressive values and support mega taxes on big businesses and the top 1%, top 0.1%, as they say. And yeah, they're kind of Canada's huge left-wing counterweight, and what they really do is they tend to pull the Liberals towards the left a lot whenever the Liberals are going too moderate or conservative in their policies. And they hold a lot of, not a lot, but they hold significant numbers of seats in Parliament at a high, like, 40, 50, 60. At their best, they had over 100 seats. And now, simply because of Canada's first-past-the-post electoral system, which I will talk about, and its comparisons to proportional representation. The NDP has 24 seats, I believe, so although they're not the biggest force in federal politics, they still play a significant role in policy making, especially now during the COVID-19 crisis. A lot of the Liberal Party's policies, which are the governing party in Canada as right now, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, they tend to use a lot of NDP policies, but the NDP don't really get credit, which, in my opinion, is kind of questionable. But, of course, this isn't about my opinion. I'm trying to be I have as much political bias as the next guy, and I'm trying to be as fair and unbiased as possible. So besides our two very big parties and our left-wing socialist NDP party, we have another, what would often be described as anywhere from a fringe party to a major party, but they still play a significant role in federal politics, the Green Party. They, as their name describes, kind of is very Canada's pro-climate change movement, environmentalist party, and they're often seen as, up until recently, they were almost like a one-issue party, but that being said, they do have policies on housing and education and all of that jazz. But that being said, the Green Party right now holds 3 seats, 2 of them in British Columbia, where they play a pretty big role in politics, including one in my own riding of Nanaimo Ladysmith. And they also hold 1 seat in Fredericton, I believe, on the east coast of Canada. So, yeah, the Green Party often gets like 10% of the popular vote, 10 to maybe 12% of the popular vote. And the thing is, the Green Party, although they do get a lot of votes nationwide, other than like the prairie provinces where it's very conservative, they tend to only get a few seats, and they don't really have too much of a voice in federal politics, but they still get invited to debates and all of these political events in Canada, because they are seen as one of Canada's main political parties. The Green Party, it's really hard to put on the political spectrum, although I don't really like the political spectrum to describe different Canadian parties, simply because they're so diverse in their policies and whatnot. But the Green Party would often be described as to the left of the Liberals, maybe even as far left as the NDP, but I wouldn't put them there. I would put them between the Liberals and the NDP, because they tend to have when you compare to them the NDP, they tend to have more conservative policies when it comes to like all the other issues other than climate change. But on environmentalism, they're by far the most progressive, very pro-green movement party. The Green Party's color is green. Big surprise. So aside from those 4 big parties, the Liberals, the Conservatives, NDP, and the Greens, we also have another big party that often comes in 3rd or 4th place in terms of seat count, the Bloc Québécois. So they are kind of like a French language Quebec special interest party. Like, if they could, they would probably just leave Canada altogether and form their own country. They're often described as very nationalistic, but that being said, they are very left-wing and progressive, as Quebecers tend to be. And their color is turquoise, and they tend to be this really almost seen as this disruptive voice in Canadian politics, because Quebec is the 2nd biggest province in Canada after Ontario in terms of population, and biggest in size probably as well, although that's not important. And they tend to get a lot of seats in Quebec and take away from the Liberals' power, because the Liberals often get a lot of seats in Quebec. And in 2011, the NDP got a lot of seats in Quebec, so they are pretty disruptive in Canadian politics when it comes to the numbers that the other parties get. But they only run politicians in Quebec, obviously, and they tend to be this, like, separatist movement party. So those 5 parties are really the only ones that are notable. But I should say something about Maxime Bernier's People's Party. People's Party was formed in 2017 or 2018, I believe. They're a break-off of the Conservative Party. They have no seats. They lost their only seat, which was held by the leader, Maxime Bernier, in the 2019 election. But that being said, they're still alive and still trying to win. In the last election, they won like 1.5% or 2% of the popular vote, something like that. But they're basically a very far-right, rigidly right-wing, anti-immigration, pro-oil party. They don't really believe in climate change, to my understanding, or they don't believe in human-caused climate change, at least. And they tend to be like the ultra far-right Canadian voice in federal politics. And the only people that actually support that party are like the really rigidly anti-immigration, anti-climate change movement, like ultra-conservative movement. That's the only way I can describe them. I know I just repeated myself, but that's the only way I can describe the People's Party. But as they have no seats in the House of Commons, or they don't have any like notable politicians on the scene, they're kind of dead. So aside from those 6 parties, which are the only parties I would like that are notable, that if I were to create a manual of Canadian political parties, I would only put those 6 on the list. But we do have a lot of barely notable fringe parties. Like, the first one I would describe is the Christian Heritage Party, which often gets like 40 to 50,000 votes federally every election. Although I think they lost a lot in this election cycle. They're kind of Canada's like evangelist, or I guess what they appeal to is like very conservative Catholics and like white evangelical Christians. They appeal to a very small minority of Canadians, because Canadians tend to be like more secular or whatever than Americans. And then the other smaller political parties we have are like the Communist Party of Canada, which is pretty self-explanatory. So we have the even harder left Communist Party of Canada, which is the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada. Leninist Party of Canada, which is Canada's like ultra like pro-USSR politics, authoritarian left-wing party. And yeah, we have the Rhino Party, which is like a meme party, and we have the other big fringe party is the Libertarian Party, which often gets like 40,000 votes, and that's pretty self-explanatory. They support like really conservative libertarian politics. I hope you liked my brief explanation of what the 5 or 6 main political parties of Canada really stand for and what role they play in federal politics. This is just a really quick overview. I could go in greater depth if I wanted to. Let me know if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel, and like the video, and I will be coming with new political based content. See you later.